evening. Welcome to DidsburyFM. DidsburyFM stands for Didsbury Fabulous Mums and Dads and all, so you don't need to have had loads of familiar faces in the audience. Great to see you all. John Leach has joined us, but you've not been here for a while. We've got various newcomers, which is brilliant. Lady there, Chris and Liz, who are my neighbours, and of course a great audience of speakers and guests this evening. Firstly, we have a few announcements and updates, if we can. The Buddy Bench, which is on the Poppy Park, which we, Didsbury FM, donated as part of Didsbury Arts Festival, as an aim to try and end loneliness and isolation or encourage communication, is doing very well. It's staying on the Poppy Path, which is the back of the park for now, and if people complain about its presence, then we will move it to Fog Lane, but it's been really successful. Sorry if you went there today for cake and face painting. Did anyone go? Oh, good. I'm sorry, I lost my phone, and then Sarah was at a wedding, and so that didn't quite happen. So sorry if you did, there will be other opportunities. Just a few announcements, if I may. So the format is we interview each guest at a time. When we finish, then it's open to the floor to ask questions. Please try not to swear, that includes myself, and not to ask a question. If you ask a question that's inappropriate, I won't take it and we'll move swiftly on. And so I just give that warning. Hello to people at home who are watching. And so the announcement really is Extinction Rebellion, which is all about climate change, which is why Liz and Chris are here. And you may have seen them yesterday in the village, big protest. And so you've got all these leaflets on your tables. Please take the opportunity, particularly in the break. If you haven't got one, I can hand them over to you. They're over there. Liz and Chris didn't want to stand up and speak about it, so I'm doing it on their behalf. But there's a big meeting which is happening on the 27th? 25th of July at Emmanuel Church, which is the church hall at the back. Is that right?
It's the main church.
The main church, yeah. We've been there before, Didsbury FM, for those who have been there. To discuss these issues, so please attend. There are some permission forms for your email so that you can be contacted and kept up to date about what they're doing and where it's happening. School will be finished, so I'll be attending that meeting and we'll be announcing it. So please take the opportunity to take a leaflet away and spread the news to the neighbours in Didsbury and to see if we can make a real difference. I think you all remember that we managed to stop McDonald's building in Didsbury through Didsbury FM, so I'm not sure we can stop climate change, but we can take proactive action and attend the meeting. So thank you very much. Brilliant. So there's a raffle, so we'll be raising money for a charity. You know the drill. We've got prizes with Food Sorcery, The Botanist, and I can't remember the other place. This evening, you can buy tickets from Claire and Sophie in the corner when we have a break. But without further ado, can I announce the three speakers we've got this evening? It's going to be a good one. We've got Tim Lambert, who will be followed by Rachel Morgan-Trimmer, who was really interesting and exceptional. And then we've got David Howe, headmaster of Beaver Road Primary School, who will be sharing with us his next steps and journey. So it is going to be a good one, and we really look forward to your questions in due course. But let's start firstly by welcoming Tim Lambert. Hello, Tim.
Hello. Hi, Sally. Hi, everybody.
Now, Tim, I want to start from the beginning, really. You're a Didsbury dad.
I am.
You're married to Rosemary.
I am.
Rosemary's an award-winning writer.
Absolutely, among other things.
Yes. I say that because Rosemary's been a guest, and I have actually seen a real BAFTA in your house.
Yes.
And it's really heavy, isn't it?
It's incredibly heavy. In fact, it's quite damaged because it fell off the mantelpiece. I got a little bit bent, but I mean, no, it weighs a ton, I tell you. We don't need dumbbells in our house, you just need to wield the BAFTA.
Yes, absolutely. Well, for those who haven't heard Rosemary, we might invite her back, so I don't want to ruin it. But we're interested in hearing more about you personally. And what you do. So can you tell us really what your profession is and how you came to be in Didsbury?
Okay, well I originally trained as an actor, and I worked as an actor for 10 years, and it was that originally brought me to Manchester. So I did some shows at the Library Theatre when it used to be in the basement, people who remember that, at Wythenshawe Forum and the Royal Exchange, and we had a small theatre company which did local touring. And that's why I came
Yes.
to Manchester in the first place. But now, from about 1996, I veered into corporate training and development and coaching and consultancy. And in 2004, I set up my own business, which is called Lambert Associates. And we provide leadership training, leadership development, coaching, business consultancy, psychometric testing, a whole range of business support services. And that's throughout the UK and further afield.
Interesting. So I'm really interested in some basic stuff, really. What can you tell us about leadership? I mean, are there tips and, what you go into a company and they want training? Where would you start, and what are sort of some of the golden nuggets, for example? I know this is, probably
such a big topic, isn't it?
I know.
I mean, I tend to think that if I'm talking about leadership, and there's two things that we do. We cover management skills, and we also talk about leadership, and sometimes we use the two words interchangeably, but they are actually quite different.
Yes.
And a way that I would differentiate is I'd probably say that if you're talking about management, we're really looking at the deliverers, the executors, the people who are delivering to a plan. They're making sure that the plan gets delivered. So they're like the on-site foreman, let's say. They're the on-site project managers on a construction site. Whereas when we're talking about leaders and leadership, then we're talking about the architects, we're talking about the artists, we're talking about the dreamers, the people who come up with the plan, who come up with the idea, the grand vision. And it's a completely different set of skills. And leadership, I think, is much more about getting inside people's heads and hearts and really motivating and engaging with people, developing real interest, enthusiasm for an idea, helping them overcome fears about moving from one state to another state. Management is much more, I hate to say pedestrian, but it's more about the specific structural process of delivering an outcome. And very valid skills as well. But people can be very good managers. But there was I don't remember who said it, but someone said you can manage projects and you can manage things, but you need to lead people. And there has to be a distinction.
Yes.
Because you have to get inside people's heads and understand what they're frightened of, what their aspirations are, what excites them, and work with that and help them overcome any resistance. Whereas management is just more about following a process or making sure the process is robust enough.
Yes. Well, do you think that leaders are born or made? Can an ordinary person be a leader, or do you think they can become accidental leaders?
Yeah, well, I think the accidental leaders are probably the most interesting. I think what tends to happen is people get promoted on the basis of being very good at something technically, very proficiently. So I know Mr. Howe's here tonight, and I often cite as an example that you can be a brilliant teacher and love teaching and be incredibly engaging, very, very pupil-centred, and love that experience of being an educationalist. And you're highly skilled at that. If your career wants to develop, then what? For many people, it means the only way I can develop my career is to move out of what I'm doing and what I really love doing and what my technical skills are, and move into a different role, which is more about management, more about leadership, and I'm moving further and further away from being in the classroom, interacting with children in that way. And it's the same in industry, that you can get people who are technically incredibly proficient, IT specialists and whatever, who the only way they can rise through the ranks is to accept a promotion. And in so doing, they accept a promotion, which means they're no longer required to do the thing they're really good at. Now they've got to manage a team of people to do that instead. And that is a completely different skill set, and very, very challenging as well. Because the thing they love doing, the thing they're highly specialised at doing, isn't really the thing that they're required to do now. So helping people manage that transition, I think, is important. There are some companies I've come across who quite cleverly have two career pathways. And they say, we're going to have a technical expertise career pathway, whereby we'll continue to promote you and give you more responsibility and let you work on bigger projects, but without requiring you to take on people management responsibilities.
Yes.
And then they have another career path which is much more focused on developing your leadership and management capability to manage teams and groups. And I think that that's a really good way to go, because if you've got somebody who's fantastic at something and loves something, then really you want to keep them there and reward them for it and let them carry on doing that, rather than saying the only way you can actually move forward in your career is to stop doing all of that and do something completely different.
Interesting. So have you got any top tips for leadership before I move on to some other questions?
Top tips?
Yeah, I think five top tips or something.
Five? You want five? Five top tips.
What?
Five top tips.
I'm self-employed, so you know.
Yeah. Five top tips. Which is the one I'd probably. Well, I mean, I'm a big believer in authenticity and being genuine and being sincere, and particularly in holding your hands up if you screw up. You know, if things go wrong, the best thing you can do is at the very, very earliest stage say, do you know what, I made an error there, I made an error of judgment, I got it wrong, and I'm going to correct it straight away. The worst thing you can do is to pretend that you're untouchable because you're in a position of responsibility and leadership, or bat it away. So I think being absolutely upfront and transparent. There's a really nice little acronym around trust, actually, and I think trust is really critical for anybody in any position, but particularly in a leadership role.
Yes.
And it's a simple little model that says, in order to have trust with anybody, it doesn't matter who, you and I, there are certain things that I need to demonstrate. And one is credibility. So if I'm talking to you, I need to know what I'm talking about. I need to have the qualifications to know what I'm talking about. I need to be sufficiently well read and understand the topic to have credibility to make an observation or express an opinion. So that's one. Reliability is critical. So if I say I'm going to do something, I have to do it. I have to follow up on that, and I have to make sure that if there's a problem, I'll let you know. But if I've committed to something, I will do it, and I won't let you down. And the other is what's called intimacy, which is really about the ability to express your vulnerability, be completely open with the other person, not hide anything from them. So make sure that you share with them all the information that they need in order to be able to do what they need to do. And you're less likely to trust me if you feel I'm keeping something back, if I'm, for whatever reason, keeping it to myself, or I'm not prepared to show vulnerability.
But isn't that a sign of weakness?
A sign of weakness not to show vulnerability? Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think it is.
No. But if I share with you my openness and my vulnerabilities, won't I feel as though I'm weakened somehow by doing that? I don't mean me personally. If one shares it, is there a school of thought, and that's kind of alpha leadership?
I think that's the part of the problem with the alpha leadership model, is one that doesn't show weakness and doesn't say sorry and doesn't hold their hands up. And I'm not just talking about in the political spectrum where that's rife, but even within business, people for whatever reason feel I can't admit to failure, I can't admit to mistakes, and yet you don't learn anything unless you acknowledge that you've made an error of judgment. Sometimes we make decisions based on what we know at the time. Things change, and to not have the facility to go back and say, in the light of all the stuff we now know, I have a different viewpoint and I'm now going to express that. Being dogmatically wedded to a particular idea and disregarding all the evidence to the contrary is, for me, a sign of massive weakness and a hugely destructive thing. But yes, if you show your vulnerability, then people can exploit it. So if you want to develop trust with people, if you want to develop real rapport with people, you have to also accept that you're laying yourself on the line. And some people, some unscrupulous people, some people might want to exploit that, might want to use that against you. But if that is the case, I think A, they're a minority, and B, who's the loser at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So it's much better to come clean, be straight, be open, be honest.
Yes.
So that model is about credibility, reliability and intimacy, and make sure that you demonstrate those, but play down your own personal self-interest. So let people know that you actually have their best interests at heart. And the best leaders are leaders who are prepared to put themselves out and suffer a bit in order to make things better for the people that they're leading.
So I was going to ask you a question about Boris Johnson.
Good. Glad you asked about Boris.
And whether you can assist us if he does become the Prime Minister of the country. Whether you'd be able to train him on some of these skills, but I just wondered if you had any observations.
We've got some good barbers in Didsbury who could do a good job for a start. Is he trainable?
Yeah.
Is that the question?
Yeah, is he trainable? Without, I'm not asking you a political voting, but I just wonder in this era now, those skills that you have outlined are very helpful, but I'm not sure that we can necessarily see them.
No, and I find that this is one of the things I find very difficult about the age we're living through, because we try to educate our children to be honourable, to be straight, to do the right thing, to have a good, strong moral compass, to think of the needs of other people. Certainly, in the community we're in, to have a good appreciation of diversity and inclusion, and to really value those things. And yet what we see at the highest level of our government and other governments around the world is the exact opposite of that. And people rising through the ranks to positions of great seniority and great power, who do not demonstrate any of those behaviours, and it's a really difficult. I think it's a hugely challenging. It was a challenging time for me, and I'm in my late 50s. But for young people, with really mixed messages about what is acceptable, really. So without betraying my own, personal political preferences, I think that we have woeful world leadership at the moment. There are some pockets throughout the world. And I happen to believe that Europe is really showing the way at the moment, and it's a shame that we're even talking about removing ourselves from it. Yeah. But we're not being fed a good example by people in politics, and maybe that's because the adversarial system, the way it's funded, just seems to allow that flotsam to rise to the surface. I don't know, but. It's not an example that I am happy to promote or suggest is right. So, but some people obviously think he's the bee's knees. Yeah. There are people who will vote for him. The chances are, it seems ridiculous to say, without having had a lot to drink, that he could be our next PM. Seems a bit.
Yeah. Well, I can always invite
crazy.
him onto DidsburyFM.
Yeah. Do you think he'd come, John?
Yeah, very nice.
No.
So I'd have to lobby.
Yeah.
I'm not overly keen on them.
I did wonder whether I ought to have a couple of kippers in my pocket for tonight, just in case it all went a bit hairy. But
no need for that.
But so I mean, can you re-educate? Can you teach? I don't know. I think one of the things that's very difficult to teach is a moral compass.
Yeah.
And I think that part of the problems we have is that some people don't have it. They're narcissistic, they're sociopathic, for whatever reason they're out for themselves, and therefore will do and say whatever they want to promote themselves. So on that model, they've got too much self-interest.
Yeah.
Everything they're doing is for self-interested purposes, and for me that's a fundamental error of leadership. And eventually, maybe what goes around comes around. Maybe he'll be hoisted on his own petard as a result.
Yeah, interesting. Anyway, it's far too much tangent for us. But can I ask you, we are a community network, and we believe in connecting our communities and being here and talking. And Brexit told us we were a divided community. And so I wondered really, what does community mean to you? And then I'm going to ask you about what you would do with £1 million for the community. I haven't got it. Sometimes on the radio, I think the listeners think we've got £1 million. We're like, oh, crikey.
Yeah, definitely want to come on your radio show.
I know, but we have not got £1 million. We're keen, for example, to crowdfund for a youth centre in Didsbury, or help Home Cafe, which is a centre presently. So what does community mean to you, and what would you spend your £1 million on?
Well, community means many, many things. I mean, fundamentally, it means respect for me, and it means connection. We have in the street we live on, knowing our neighbours. I mean, our key drawer is so full because we seem to have the keys for every house on the street, and we're constantly popping in and feeding other people's cats when they go away and looking out for each other, and knowing people on the street, being able to have conversations with people, look out for people on the street. So that level of connection, and that crosses all boundaries, so it doesn't matter what age or gender or cultural heritage, it's just that fundamental respect and having that association rather than living in ghettos, living in separate areas and not connecting. Yeah. So I think that's critical for me, and that's one of the things I love about Didsbury is the richness and the diversity, and it's certainly demonstrated in these events and the amazing people who come along, and the openness and acceptance of people.
Yes.
So that's critical. In terms of £1 million, if I had it, well, my wife Rose is here, so I suppose I should say, well, I'd spend it on her. But that probably wouldn't go down as a sort of community-minded charitable. I thought about this. There's two things. One is we lost a really precious young girl on our street called Lizzie Nee, who died of sudden cardiac arrest in her early 20s on the tram a couple of years ago, and as a result, the street's become very involved in raising money for a charity called CRY, which is Cardiac Risk in the Young. And if any of you have young children, especially 13, 14, 15, 16, whatever, really important that you go and have a very simple blood test that will tell you whether or not you have the propensity for this sudden onset, which is absolutely devastating, because in Lizzie's case, she and the family knew absolutely nothing about it until it was just instant and fatal when she was in her early 20s. So CRY is an amazing organisation. So yeah, I'd love to do that. But I was also thinking,
well, maybe we can raise some money tonight for CRY, because actually you've not told the circumstances. Lizzie ran for the tram, didn't she?
She did.
And then she had I remember that day.
Yeah.
And
she was a trainee accountant in town. She was running for the tram. She just got on the tram. She had a sudden cardiac arrest. There was a nurse, as it happened, on the tram, but in effect pronounced her dead at the spot, because it was instant. And you can imagine how devastating it was for her parents and her brother, who still live on the street. So yeah, that's affected our community a lot. And being very open and making sure that we continue to talk about Lizzie is, of course, incredibly important for her parents, because the last thing they want is people to cross the other side of the street because, oh no, here's Murray and we don't know what to say. But actually, the most important thing is to talk about Lizzie. That's all they ever think about. So that's the important thing. So it's an incredible charity, and I think that would be really good use of the money. But I'm also really conscious that we've screwed things up a bit, our generation, or at least let's say my generation, let me take responsibility. Our generation really screwed things up a bit, and I see young people doing the most amazing things, incredible things. I have a lot of faith in our young people, and a lot of the Extinction Rebellion stuff that's been going on, and the Greta Thunberg stuff that's been happening. I see our young people doing incredible things. And I think if I had £1 million and I took 1,000 young people, teenagers, and said, here, you've got £1,000 each, I want you to go and do something that you think is going to benefit our society. I just think they're going to come up with so many better ideas, and they're going to use that money so much better than myself or some other organisation or some government body would use that money. I just think, let's unleash that creativity, that energy, that enthusiasm, and their determination to do the right thing and fix things. We really haven't served them very well up to this point.
No. Tim, just before we finish, I've lost track of time. Sarah's like, we've gone over. Have you got a quote that you live by, Rosemary, that you can share with us? Something that inspires you?
Well, one I use a lot, I suppose, is what goes around comes around.
I'm not sure that's positive.
Well, it can go both ways. For me, it's about just put stuff out there. Some people, what's it better to give than receive? Well, the more you give, you just tend to find